Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the podcast. Today I'm joined, as always, by my heterosexual life partner, Rob, and we are joined by the lovely Mariam from Grim Exchange. That's what it's called, the Grim Exchange.
Hey everyone, good to see you, finger guns.
So yeah, we just brought Mariam on just because she's a fountain of knowledge, as I've found from her channel. So yeah, I'm just going to talk to you about how you got into horror and stuff, Mariam. So do you want to take it away?
Okay, all right, just jump right into it. How I got into horror. Well, sit down, I will spin you a tale.
Oh.
I got into horror fairly late compared to other people because I have sleep paralysis issues. So I thought that if my brain was able to come up with these stories that were absolutely terrifying, then a film that was produced to scare you would be even worse than that. So I think I held out, even though I was always drawn to creepy things. I think I dove into literature before I dove into films, horror literature and spooky tales, and a lot of films that I didn't perceive as horror as a child. Now I look back and I go, no, that's a scary movie. Little Mariam of the past, you were watching horror films. Like Gremlins is a classic horror film. I don't know what to tell you, but it didn't feel that way to me. So I kind of avoided it for a long time, and then I remember, like, the first time I was fully aware that I was seeking out a horror film and I wanted to watch it was when I was 17, and I saw The Grudge. And it was a really great experience because, first of all, I realized that horror films are not as bad as nightmares. So I was like, okay, well, I don't know what I was scared of. But second of all, it was a weird experience because the first half of the film I didn't think was scary at all. And then at the halfway point, I realized, oh my God, this is actually terrifying. And the second half of the film was it just kept getting worse and it just kept escalating. And then when it was over, I was uncomfortable, but I was excited as well. It was like that combination, considering I was already 17. So I was, not a kid anymore. And then I thought, all right, I want to watch another one. And then I saw Saw as my second horror film, and then I saw The Exorcist as my third, and all within the month. And that was it. I was addicted. I don't think I've watched any genre film as much as I have horror. And I'd say these days 99% of what I consume is either horror or a documentary. Because horror has so many like crossover directions as well. So yeah, I just fell in love with the genre. Like, I can't help it. I love it.
I do remember myself. I mean, I watched many movies as a kid, and some of them were sort of horror movies, but not like the Lost Boys. Yeah, that is sort of. Do you class the Lost Boys as a horror film?
Oh, definitely. I mean, arguably, vampires make it a horror film by default.
Yeah, because
but it's also
vicious. I've always put like horror, like the Lost Boys, like in a. I've always said that the 80s is like a genre, and like Chad said, then it's like a coming of age movie. And even though, of course, there's many scary moments about it, as a kid, I never felt scared by it. I don't know why. Maybe it was just ignorance as being a child. But when I watched Scream, and that was in '96, that was when I started watching more horror films. That really terrified me. I don't know why. I must have looked at it from a different point of view from when I was a child. But Scream, sort of like, it was so much. I had so much adrenaline watching Scream. It was like, it shocked me quite a lot. I was like, wow, this film has got me pumped. I want to see more of this kind of genre movie sort of thing. That's kind of.
It was very shocking when it came out, though, Scream, wasn't it? Especially with like Drew Barrymore, obviously.
Hanging from the tree.
Yeah, where she's been gutted and she's like.
Well, I think it's a matter of that fantasy element as well, because a lot of the stories that we are told as children, especially like the fairy tales that we hear about. I know there are edited versions and there are Disney versions, but generally there are some stories that aren't sugar coated too much, and we are very used to, as children, hearing stories about things that are not great, but it's wrapped up in something more fantastical. And I think for a child or a young person, and this is something that I do talk about quite a bit as well, because I work with scientists who are studying the effect of horror on the human psyche as well. And I think that when it's too close to reality, when it has that gore aspect, and when that fantastical element is taken away from it, that's hard for kids to process when they're too young. The same with sexuality as well. I think sexuality combined with horror is something that you really can't introduce to a child at all, and even a teenager, um, until they're more matured in that department without the horror element. It's something that kind of progresses. So I could very much see how Lost Boys, or even films like the Goonies, which is a classic kids movie.
Yeah.
It's scary in its own way, but there's something about it that feels like a fairy tale, or like a classic. The knight or the knights are going on an adventure, and they're trying to either uncover the truth or save someone or whatever. And then Scream is effectively a deranged slasher movie, even though now as adults we watch it, we see the parody and we understand where they were going with it. But when you're young, you don't get that yet. You don't differentiate between the two. So if it's too close to realism, then I think it's harder for a young person to process.
What was great about Scream, I thought, as well, was how much sort of, like, let's say for someone like myself who did not know much about horror films at the time, it was a bit, that movie itself was a bit like an encyclopedia, because there's so many references to movies of the past, which obviously help, a viewer like myself, to sort of think, like when Skeet Ulrich goes, Anthony Perkins, Psycho.
Well, when like Wes Craven's dressed up as Freddy Krueger, he's a janitor in the jumper, and he's called Fred.
Yeah, I mean,
and Henry Winkler's like, Fred, what are you doing here?
Yeah, exactly. There's so many sort of like references in that film, and like I say, that's a good movie I think for people to start with if they want to get into horror films, because it might excite you to go and check other genres, or give you a little bit of a head start in finding characters that you might like, sort of thing.
Although I feel like that opinion is affected by the fact that it was one of the earlier films that you saw, because I think that knowing horror films better gives you a different watching experience. And I dare say that watching it before you've seen other horror movies is great, but you should watch it again once you've watched a lot of horror movies, because you'll really appreciate the nuances in the film. So obviously, that's how you went through it. So subjectively, that's what you feel good about. But it's one of those things where I bet if you, every 10 years of your life, if you went back and you saw the movie again every 10 years, every single time, it would be a different watching experience. Just like sometimes you take those classics and then you watch them with someone who's never seen them before, in context of a different society, of different times, of different pop culture, and then their experience is different, and you're observing them processing this film so differently than the way you did when you first watched it. So I think Scream is one of those films that is a must-see, but it's also one of those films, and I don't necessarily, I'm going to be honest, like watching films more than once. I do it very rarely. That's one of those films I feel like you can watch more than once and it'll mean something else every time.
So, just a bit off topic from that, but you say you don't watch a film like any more than the once. Do you not have like a comfort film then that you just watch religiously because it makes you feel good?
Well, for some reason, I like stuff that are, I don't know, 80 to 100 years old, because there's comfort in that. I think that it kind of reminds me of when you had a channel that usually did kids programs during the day, and then there was a time, at least in the States, and then they would flip and then they'd stop showing kids programs and they would start showing old movies, not necessarily horror, but sometimes horror and sometimes sci-fi and that sort of thing. And I remember, because usually it was past my bedtime, but if I ever woke up in the middle of the night, my parents were sleeping and I snuck to the TV room and I could turn it on because like naughty, those old films would run and I would just watch it because it was television. But it's kind of led to the fact that now when something old is running, like a black and white sort of film, despite the pacing being different and the effects being different and the sound quality being different, there's something that reminds me of what it was like to be a kid and sneaking that time for yourself when no one else is watching, that provides comfort. There's another thing that I do as well when I can't sleep at night. Sometimes I put on the old radio show The Shadow, and I know it's not completely horror, it's more like, I don't know, a detective story with like a phantom element to it. But what's cool is that some of the recordings, they must have been filmed or recorded, it's purely audio, in front of people. So they have the advertisements for like blue coal at the beginning, and you can hear people in the audience like chuckling over jokes and over the wittiness of some of these commercials. And those people haven't been around for decades. They're gone, but their voices are captured in that space during the reading of this story. And there's just something about it. It's almost like the comfort of these ghosts around you that, you know, no longer exist. I don't know, there's something about that that I find particularly cool. So I'll consume that over and over again, and it'll make me feel good.
I think that was the most beautiful thing that's ever been said on this show.
Yeah, it was
that was deep, Mariam. That was some deep.
You put that as a one woman play or something.
Yeah.
On the
I want that on my gravestone.
Yeah.
That was top notch poetry right there.
Is there a sort of like a movie from your childhood sort of thing that you kind of that you like to like revisit every so often? That's not maybe horror.
First of all, comedies. Whether it's a horror comedy or a different kind of comedy, I feel like it's almost like having an inside joke with your friends, but it's a film. A good comedy I will watch over and over again. And then with my childhood films, you know, most stuff that I watched as a child and enjoyed, I would enjoy watching again because, and I think this comes from the VHS era where your parents had films on cassette and they just put them on more than once because they needed to keep you entertained. There was no streaming. And I don't know about you guys, but my parents didn't necessarily buy all the cassettes. Sometimes they would play a film maybe on TV and then record it onto like another VHS, an empty one that they bought. So we would have these cassettes with like lots of films that at some point ran on TV, and you would watch those. We did that quite a lot
here as well.
Yeah, right. And I think that's kind of, the VHS kids will know that. I don't think people before that era completely understand, and I don't think people after will either. I mean, maybe in theory, yes, but now there are so many films that are made that are never watched. You have to be really selective with your time. Right. There's a lot of quality stuff, a lot of independent stuff. People are more selective with what they view. So there's less of, less big pop culture movements. Like you have to see this film. It's all like subgenres and subcultures now, which is really cool because you're constantly discovering new stuff. But there's something about being part of that generation where you had what you got and you made the best of it and it meant something to you, even if it was a crappy film, it meant something to you. Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely, if something from my childhood was put on, an old film, I'd be like, yes, let's do this.
Can you remember the first film you rented from a video store? Can you, Rob?
I've got an idea.
I know mine.
I've got two. Go on, Chad.
Mine's Babe 2, Pig in the City. And I talk about a film. Babe 2, by George Miller. By George Miller.
George Miller. Weirdly enough, actually, this is quite coincidental. There's two films. I'm not too sure in which order, but the first two that I rented was The Goonies and Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, also directed by George Miller.
Not as good as Babe 2, though.
No, but
Pig in the City.
I've not seen either Babe film, but this is making me want to watch it.
You should watch Babe.
I
know.
This guy.
One was great.
We have car boot sales in the UK, which is basically like what do you call them in America or Germany? Have you heard of car boot sales?
I know they don't have that here, but I know what a car boot sale is.
Yeah, because at the weekend I literally walked past Babe 1.
A yard sale, that's what Americans call it. A yard sale, there you go. For our American friends.
But a yard sale is on your yard, it's not from your car trunk.
I walked past
We're not men in the world.
And Babe 2 DVD. I walked past them on the weekend on someone's table. And now thinking about it, I really regret not getting them.
Babe 2, Pig in the City.
Yeah, I believe you will take that regret to your grave because that is a big one.
Hang my head in shame.
Last words on you. I should have brought those DVDs. That's gone.
You can leave one on the grave for me.
I'll do it. Babe 2.
I don't remember what the first cassette was that we ever rented. I remember one that I rented a lot was Mulan. I don't know why my parents didn't just buy it. But I told Chad this, but I didn't tell you this. One film that probably was my earliest spooky film memory was the straight to TV movie, The Halloween Tree.
One of the best Cartoon Network films ever.
It's so, you know what, and I didn't get what Hanna-Barbera was at the time. Like, I didn't know any of these things, but I remember watching it and the different insights on Halloween, where it came from, how different cultures celebrate it, the fact that these friends are trying to save the soul of their very sick friend. There's a lot of really serious themes that are picked up in this film, but it's so colorful. It's based on a book, you know, it's so much fun.
The book's
so I enjoyed
good.
that. Yeah, no, it's all fantastic, and I definitely recommend it, even the straight to TV movie. But what kind of added an additional nuance as an adult? So as a kid, I loved it. As a teen, I loved it. But then as an adult, I kind of went back. You know, Wikipedia was a thing, and I was like, you know, what can I learn about this film? And I didn't realize until my adult age that Leonard Nimoy was the voice for the Grim Reaper. And what's extra cool is that Leonard Nimoy's birthday is my birthday. Oh. So it added an additional level of connection to the whole thing. I was like, okay, I like that.
It definitely makes it more special. One of my favourite films as a kid, going off topic now in sort of spookiness kind of thing, but one of my first films I remember watching as a kid was Three Men and a Baby, also directed by Leonard Nimoy.
Leonard Nimoy
There
directed.
you go.
Didn't know that.
Full circle. I had no idea he directed that. That's amazing.
He did, yeah.
Well, back on the Halloween Tree, it's actually become a bit of a family tradition for me. I showed my son a few years back, so now we watch it every year as well, and my wife watches it as well. And I'll have to bring it in for you. You'll have to watch it. Yeah,
I've not actually heard of it. Chad mentioned it recently, and I was like, what? He said Leonard Nimoy, so I thought, well, I'm in already, so it's fine.
I need to see if there's a Blu-ray available that they can ship to Germany, and I need to get a digitalized version of this, because the last time I saw it was last year, and I showed some friends who had never seen it before, and I was like, what is wrong with you? If you want to stay my friends, we need to watch The Halloween Tree. And they fell asleep during the film. I admit it was super late. I don't judge them. They ended up rewatching it separately afterwards. But it's such a fun movie, and weird. It has a weird tone to it because of that underlying, oh, their friend is dying of some really serious disease. There's something really weird about it. It's not just we're kids and we're going on an adventure. There's something really heavy about it. And it's super cool. I highly recommend it. I need to get my hands on a physical.
I could only ever find a DVD of it, and I could only ever find it on eBay, and I had to get it shipped from the States to here to be able to watch it.
Is it rare then?
I had to pay a pretty penny for it, to be fair. I think I ended up paying about £27 for it in the end. Yeah.
I mean, you can stream it online for a small fee, but it's for someone who wants to own the physical copy, it's a hassle. But it's a TV movie. It's not like it's this big production. It was a TV movie. Although arguably they put a lot of work into that, because basically every chapter is a new country with a new setup and a new style. I mean, that for an animated TV film, it was very ambitious. So I don't know why it's not more commonly distributed. Don't know. But it's a great film. You should watch it. Let me know what you think.
I'm going to make him watch it.
I do want to see it, because I have a son who's 4, and he's starting to... I took him to his first cinema experience the other day to watch Paw Patrol the movie.
Good film.
And he generally was like, was in, hopefully, I was hoping he would be in awe of it, and he luckily was. But I wanted to sort of, have to expand his... Can a 4-year-old watch The Halloween Tree?
Yeah. I watched it when I was I think I was 5 when it came out.
Very
and that's when I watched it.
educational.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then in that case, yeah, he will definitely get to see it, and he will watch it hopefully the first time I do. So, two perspectives.
Yeah, it's very. I love it.
And child.
Well, generally, when it comes to horror and children, and I will say this because I think especially horror fans who are now parents themselves or becoming parents, it's something that they do think about a lot. And what's brilliant about certain forms of media with horror for children is that it teaches kids how to take control over what works for them and what doesn't. It teaches them to set their own boundaries. So when you're reading a scary book to a kid, the kid can say, I don't want to anymore. And then you close the book, or the kid closes the book, or it might linger on a page and look at an illustration for a lengthy amount of time because it's scary, but you want to study it and kind of explore your feelings. And it's the same with films, as long as you watch these movies with your kids, and when they're uncomfortable, you let them know, hey, we can turn it off. It's fine. We have control over that. Psychologically, it's fantastic for kids when they're developing those boundaries for themselves, exploring where their own boundaries are. It's very healthy, I would argue, and a lot of psychologists would argue as well, to let kids get in touch with horror as long as the themes are not too mature. And then, maybe not 4, but when they get to like 9, 8, 9, 10, then there's also the experience of watching something spooky or telling like campfire stories with your friends, because then it's not just about your own personal boundaries, but it's about status, because you guys are brave and you managed to sit through a whole movie and you just feel better about yourself. There's that peer dynamic, there's the confidence, and that comes later on when they're a little bit older. But at that age, it's about teaching them boundaries, and it's very healthy, but you just need to make sure you keep an eye on it and you watch what works for them and what doesn't.
So would you say there's an age that you think's right to start watching horror films?
Yeah. Again, avoid mature themes. Also, every child is different.
Yeah.
Every child has different boundaries. You need to develop a sensitivity, towards what your kid or the kid in front of you, what they like, what they don't like, what they're exposed to, what they haven't been exposed to yet. But the fact of the matter is, especially children, they constantly deal with intimidating situations and subject matter. There's a lot they don't understand yet. There's a lot that's scary, and they look to us adults, particularly parents, but it could also be like grandparents, aunts, uncles, teachers. They look to us to kind of make them feel good about something, make them feel comfortable, and kind of teach them what's okay and what isn't okay. And I know a lot of people who already show adult horror films to their children, but they say the 70s, 80s stuff, even if it's gory, if it looks fake, I will sit with my kids and I'll say it's fake, it's fake, it's fake, and they can kind of distance themselves from it. But again, that is a very unique choice, and everyone has to kind of deal with that themselves. I've been to conventions and worked at conventions where, for example, the little girl is dressed up like Pennywise, and this kid has not seen it before, but it loves being the monster because there's something empowering about dressing up and being the scary thing. And then at another Christmas market, I was collecting donations dressed as Krampus. So I was in like full Krampus gear with like a whip and a bell, and it was, arguably this is the adult part of it, but I offered to shout at people and hit them with the sticks if they donated to Whitechapel, and got a lot of donations that day. It was a very successful day. But I remember a little girl coming up to me with her mother, and she looked at me. Obviously, I had contact lenses, big fur, and all this makeup on, because big kids like to dress up too. And she was kind of like looking at me like, what's the situation here? And her mom said, it's okay, you can go up to Krampus isn't going to hurt you. And then I said, hey there, little girl. And she opened her mouth with a big smile and had those glow in the dark vampire things in her mouth. You guys know the little plastic ones that you get for Halloween. And I said, wow, that's so scary. And she was super proud that I said that. And I said, and I would know because I'm a monster. And she just giggled and she was really excited. So although she looked at me and it was really freaky at first, the fact that her mom was like, it's fine. And then she could show off her teeth and I would show off my horns and we were bonding over being scary. She was having a lot of fun and she really loved it. And her mom was laughing and it was great. But it was a very slow, very safe space. Someone she trusted was there, and it was like step by step, and not me like jumping out or booga 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 and just freaking her out. It was like no, it was a communication. It was a process, and that's always what it's like when it comes to kids and scary stuff. Kids like feeling scared if they feel like that they're safe. Like I'm feeling scared, but nothing is actually going to happen to me. And if I don't want it, it will go away. That's okay. It's when it feels like it's out of control that kids don't know how to process that. And they shouldn't really be put in that situation because that can have long-term effects on them.
I suppose that's the way, like, so obviously, because children love like fairy tale books, which they grow up on, and they read the stories in bed with and the parents will put on the voices, and they will create, they will recreate the character themselves, and like that kind of, because I used to read like religiously Hansel and Gretel, which I generally thought was a scary story because of was she a witch?
The witch, yeah, in the gingerbread house.
Yeah, and I've always been scared of like, of all horror characters or people. I've always been like witches have always been something I remember watching Angelica Houston in The Witches as a young child, and what a wonderful movie. And I actually went to the hotel where they filmed it in Cornwall, down south. They actually have a tour at that hotel to this day in Cornwall where you can go and look at the set basically. And they actually have someone's I believe recently they actually announced. The actual hotel, they're looking for someone to play the Grand High Witch.
That's wild
in
cool.
Makeup. So when people come to visit and do the tour, so the Grand High Witch is there. But like I say,
I'll send my application.
Was it? Krampus is coming. But yeah, watching like I say, the witches and reading Hansel and Gretel, things like that. My parents were always there for me to sort of make me realise it wasn't real. And and it's okay to sort of be scared, and obviously to stop if it's a bit too much, kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. Just a side note, I named my car Angelica Houston.
Wow, there you go. Well, Morticia as well.
Yeah, well, it's because I've got a window on my roof, and I can close this thing for shade. So my car throws shade. And if you've ever seen Angelica Houston in recent interviews, she throws shade. So at some point I was like, I'm naming my car Angelica Houston to celebrate the Grand High Witch. It's the best name for a car.
Obviously at the beginning I said that you've got your own channel, the Grim Exchange. Very good channel, may I just add. So yeah, just want to give you sort of the floor now to sort of, if you've got anything coming that you want to tell our sort of channel people that watch us about. And obviously you've been making mad moves with, you've interviewed the guy who directed PG Gorman and stuff, and yeah, you're doing really well at the moment, and we hope to get there one day ourselves. So yeah, have you got anything you want to?
Well, yeah, so I do a lot of Q&As for lots of different festivals, online platforms. I love interviewing horror content creators. I just love it. And I guess that's why I'm booked to do these things. So when I interviewed Steve for Psycho Gorman, that was for Horror DNA, for example. And I think just a few days ago, we had the link go up for my interview with Cody for Vicious Fun. We've also got an interview with Barbara Crampton coming up for Horror DNA, for Jacob's wife, and the director. It's a fantastic one, and another one with the director of the Night House, which is currently, I think, on. So that's also for our Horror DNA, and that will be going up soon. I think this weekend, actually. But then the other channel where I do a lot of content is Grimfest TV. And yes, we have the Grim Exchange that is usually, when it's not summer break, every 2 weeks. But what we have coming up is a lot of bonus content that's connected to Grim Up North, or Grimfest, the actual horror film festival. So a lot of that bonus content will be going on in addition to the Grim Exchange. And another thing that we're doing again this year that we also did last year, in case you also want to binge the old ones, the old episodes, when I interview people, horror filmmakers, I try to get them to tell me real life spooky stories, whether it's weird coincidences, ghost encounters, anything like that. And we do compilation videos. So it's, horror content creators telling real life spooky stories. So you'll be getting that in October as well. Like I said, you can already see some of the stories from last year, but we've got a new lineup for this October. So yeah, definitely check out Grim Exchange, and generally channel Grimfest TV. Check out everything I do for Horror DNA. But generally I bounce around a lot. So if you kind of want updates on what I'm doing in general, my Instagram page is probably a good place to go. Handle is at lady_Mariam_Michael. And I have a new Twitter account that I kind of only just opened a few weeks ago. And I think I'm just called Ms. Lady Mariam on Twitter.
There we go, yeah. Well, that brings us to the end of this. Yeah, it's been very, very informative, Mariam. You're very, very well.
I'm sorry.
You know your stuff is what I'm trying to say, I think.
We were saying basically before we started recording that Mariam was an encyclopedia. I think from this video, you've proved that.
You are. Yes. You put me to shame. Put me to shame, Michael. I knew my stuff, but I am not a stuff knower. It's not even the words you say, is it?
Why not? Use it. Go with it.
So yeah, we just want to say thank you for coming on.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. No, it's been great, and we'll have to do this again sometime.
Definitely, we'll definitely have you on again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers, thank you. Bye.
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 Cheers for that, Mariam. That was a great episode. Don't forget to check out all of Mariam's Instagram, Twitter, and check out everything she does on YouTube. Again,
we'll put some links at the bottom.
Yes,
of this
we'll
video
put some
so
links
you
in
can
them.
follow her.
So yeah, that brings us to the end of the show.
Yeah.
Again, great show. Thanks again, Mariam. And yeah, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and do all the other things. Cheers, guys. Sorry, she did finger guns as well. I'll do some finger guns.